So great to have you here. I want to first ask you kind of your origin story within AI. So how did you get interested in it? Was it like a particular childhood experience or maybe something you found in school that really drew you to this field?
I have quite a weird background. My undergrads were in computer science, and then I got acquainted with probability theory, and that's why I did a master's in statistics. And then I realized that there's a great area in the intersection of statistics and computer science, which is the so-called machine learning or artificial intelligence, or there are several titles, data science or whatever. And I was very into that because I could code and I could understand the stats, and I was really into employing this kind of background in order to solve questions towards healthcare applications.
Yeah, I know that you're currently a PhD student at the University of Cambridge's MRC-Biostatistics unit, which sounds like a really great mix of all of your interests in one place.
Yes.
So could you tell us a bit more about how you came about joining the group, about your research or some of your favorite projects?
So, before starting a PhD, I wasn't sure that it was a research material. So I was a research associate for a couple of years, and then I realized that that's what I wanted to do, and that research is my thing. And as I said, research towards healthcare applications, I think that that's really impactful, and that can be of help to society, to quite a lot of people. So that was why I applied for this particular PhD. And the topic of my PhD is using generative models to healthcare applications. So it's quite wide, but the idea is that we started even by with genome data, and how can we actually use a Bayesian modeling, very basic statistics kind of. And then it evolved, and I started introducing things like generative adversarial networks, and how we can actually employ generative adversarial networks in order to generate data of patients, because for the time being, generative adversarial networks have been used for imaging data or language, text and documents things, but they haven't been really used for real data like electronic healthcare records. So I was wondering whether we could actually employ them towards this direction, and I did that, and then evaluating the outcome of that, and then checking, electronic healthcare records, they do have a problem of missing data. That's an intrinsic problem. How can we actually address that? And if we can address that through variational decoders or generative adversarial networks. And that's pretty much the topics of my PhD.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting how you're interested in both kind of the how it works and also the impact that it has in healthcare. So
Yes.
I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit and gather your thoughts about where you think the future of this applied statistical research to healthcare is going to be, maybe in the next 10, 20 years. Where do you see the potential of this going in the future?
I've noticed that there's quite a gap between the simulating data and the real data. So in statistics, we simulate data, and we use some processes that most of the times are far from the actual generative process, which we do not know. I thought that what if we use something that actually we do not really know, it's a black box, we do not really know how it does simulate data, but the data that it generates, they're quite close to the real ones, so that we can actually challenge our models and make our models better. So in my perspective is, I think that given the fact that we're going to have better simulated data, we're going to challenge our models, and we're going to have better models in the future in this regard.
Do you think in the future, you mentioned how there's this big power to generating data to make better models. So where do you kind of see the reconciliation between the generated data and the real data? Because the generated data seems to have a lot of advantages because it's easily simulated. You can create a lot of it and kind of represent it in a way that you want it to be. Whereas missing data, there's so many problems, not just with the data itself, but with how you access the data, de-identifying important health information that should be protected. So do you see a world where both of these data sources are combined, or is one going to be preferred over the other?
Well, that's going to be my postdoc, right? So the idea is that you can actually, one could actually think on conditioning on the data that they do have in order to generate data that they do not have, just, speaking of missing data. And bearing in mind that the data are not missing completely at random, or missing at random, but they are not missing at random. So what we can do with respect to proper statistics in order to generate this type of data. So, because so far, the thing is that, given the fact that AI lies in the intersection of statistics and computer science, people either come from statistics or from computer science, and they have their own perspectives. They do not see both, they do not see with both lenses and what I'm trying to do is to say that, okay, yeah, we can do that from a computer scientific perspective, but, from a statistical perspective, that's wrong, or that's, not effective, or that's, to be honest, garbage in, garbage out, because there are such papers out. So the idea is that I would like to use proper stats and proper mathematical reasoning in such problems, and at the same time, good tools from computer science, like neural networks and generative adversarial networks.
Yeah, I've enjoyed seeing your journey kind of in these past couple of minutes go from a more broad interest in statistics to then being applied towards more niche things. And specifically, you mentioned electronic health records and simulating data. And now you mentioned that it's the central part of your postdoc. So I'm wondering, what do you aim to achieve in this postdoc specifically? And also I'm curious where you think that will help you in furthering your academic research career.
So generally speaking, I love academia. That's where I would like to stay. I could move to industry, but that's not who I am. I love academia and I love research, so I'd rather stay in academia. So, and with respect to my postdoc, there's this biobank source of electronic healthcare records in the UK, and there's this all of us. Database of electronic healthcare records in the USA. So I would like to see what's going on within each of these, and then try to kind of make them a whole set, so that in the future we can actually have a broader perspective. For example, if somebody has got a particular disease, we are going to have a much bigger sample size, and we can actually predict in a better way what the life expectancy might be, or what doctors should prescribe in order for this person to have a better quality of life, or in order to overcome the problem, and things like that.
Yeah, I think that will have a huge impact for years to come. And that's really exciting that you're that you're having these huge databases from both the UK you mentioned and the US. I think for the UK, it's interesting how you have this access to data, whereas in the US, people often talk about lack of data access, usually because of commercial or private interests. So do you have any thoughts about increasing data accessibility to help researchers like yourself or others continue to make this work happen?
With respect to electronic healthcare records, I totally understand that there's the privacy problem in between. So generative adversarial networks could actually be very helpful towards this regard, because they could mimic the way that the data were generated, so that people can actually access data that they're like the real data, but not the real data per se. So people do not have to face the problem of privacy. That's one thing. The other thing is that, again, as I totally understand, we cannot just give away so personal data. So of course, this type of data should not be accessible from everybody. Mm-hmm. And they should not be open source, but some statistics coming out of this data could actually be useful for the community. So maybe instead of providing the data per se, it could be of use to provide the outcomes of this type of data. And if I'm not mistaken, and I think that I'm not, there are quite a lot of countries that actually try to do something like that. There's an effort in Japan, and that they try to do something like the UK Biobank. So there are several countries around the world that actually try to come up with a database with their patients. So maybe, there could be a pipeline where at each and every country, people could use some particular algorithms and come up with, the corresponding responses.
Yeah, you mentioned Japan, and maybe this could be like a ripple effect to other countries to help them build their own sort of version of the biobank, and then contribute to a global network where where everyone can use the data responsibly, and kind of increase the research collaborations that are happening. It's very exciting, and hopefully within the next couple of years we see that continue to grow. So I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned that in your origin story that you were working as a research associate before your PhD, and that's what made you want to pursue this career in academia. So what was it about that specific experience that made you really solidify your academia passions?
The fact that I realized that when I have a question, I cannot sleep. I cannot actually, I really want to answer this question, and most of these questions are research related, like how can, whether we can build, for example, a test in order to check for causality, or whether that there are some very basic things that we haven't sorted out yet. So when I come up with a question, then or with an idea, then I really need to test whether that holds, and what's the answer. So then I was told that that's how researchers are, and then I was like, yeah, that's pretty much who I am. That's what I do. I come up with questions, and then I really need to answer them, and that's how my research years went. I still remember that there was a day that I was working. I showed up in the office at 8 a.m. And then suddenly there were the cleaning ladies, because it was 5 a.m. the next day, and I haven't realized that I've been working the whole day long. And they were like, who are you? And I was like, what are you doing in here? But it has been, and I was so absorbed by my thoughts and the whole thing that I could just not do something else. So yeah, I cannot really function if I do not answer the question. So yeah, I think sadly I was told that that's the life of some of the researchers. Some others they can handle the whole thing in a better way.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, and the passion that you have for research really comes across the screen. So it's very, it's very
That's
nice to
good.
hear
Thank you very much.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it was terrifying actually, because I was, so focused, and then some ladies were like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "What are you doing here?" I mean, it's, and then they told me that it was 5 a.m. and I was like, "No way," Yeah, I've been working for 21 hours and I hadn't realized that.
That, I mean, you mentioned how you're so focused on your research, but you're also involved in a lot of advocacy
Mhm.
type activities. And so because you're the founder of Disability in AI, I wanted to ask you what propelled you to found this movement, and why is it so important to you?
Once, not only once, I realized after having attended some conferences and workshops, I realized that there were no captions or interpreters, or I could not see white sticks around me. And I was like, that cannot be the case. Or I could not see a person in a wheelchair. And I was like, with respect to, population, people around me, there should be some people studying what we do, what we study, or working on what we work, that have vision impairments, or hearing impairments, or other type of impairments, but yet all the conferences, like literally on the conferences are regarding AI and statistics till 2019, they would not take into account such things. So I thought that, I don't think that it's probable, let's say, with respect to statistics, that there are no scientists around that do not have this type of impairments. I think that just conferences do not address this type of problems, and people know that, so people cannot attend because conferences are in a way exclusive. So then I said, how about having a group and checking out whether there are people around, people like me, having being disabled, like with respect to several types of disabilities. And then I realized that we're quite a lot of people reached out. And then NeurIPS was the first conference ever, actually, in AI who was fully accessible, in the sense that back in 2020, there were interpreters, there were closed captions, people that could escort people with wheelchairs. Back in 2020 was it was 2019, because 2020 was the NeurIPS was virtual. So it was the NeurIPS of 2019, the first fully accessible workshop ever, conference ever in AI.
That's an amazing story. I think you kind of woven together this really beautiful story about not just your research, but also trying to include other people who are interested in research and create this community of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to access all of the beauty of research. And it's really amazing that you were able to start up this initiative by yourself and kind of grow it to what it's become. Do you see?
I just could not stand the feeling that people are excluded, because they are excluded. If you're at a wheelchair and there are no ramps, then you cannot actually access a place. If you're deaf and there are no interpreters, then there's no point in actually attending such a conference, right? Because you cannot attend the invited talks. So it feels as if, NeurIPS back in 2019, it had 10,000 attendees, and within 10,000 attendees, you would expect that some people would be deaf or some people would be blind, and so on and so forth. So we do have to do something about them. And also, it works the other way around. People could also know by the age of, I don't know, 15, that AI is a community that it is open with respect to people that are disabled. So you can't be disabled and study AI. There is already a structure in there, and you can actually do that. It's not a place that does not take into account some particular needs that you might have.
Yeah, I think with regard to creating a more inclusive community, you've also done work with women in data science in particular, and I'm
Yes.
curious, like how your involvement with that is similar to and different to what you've done with disability and AI.
It's quite similar, but in the sense that, again, my point is not to be grumpy or start complaining about what has not been done, or, my point is to showcase that there are brilliant women in AI, for example. There are brilliant women in data science. There are brilliant scientists that they are disabled, but they need to address some of their needs. So it's pretty much the idea. It's pretty much the core is pretty much the same. That there are pretty brilliant people out there that they are suppressed or excluded, and we need to give them some space we need to nurture them in order for them to be able to speak out or to talk about what they've been doing, or because women, we are outnumbered in data science and statistics as well. And also, for example, as you move further towards the hierarchy, women, with respect to professors, for example, women are much less as compared to men, but that does not make sense, and that should not be the case. So let's showcase excellent scientists in this particular field.
Yeah, very wise words, and you put it so eloquently too. So I want to kind of conclude by asking, like, what would you tell yourself? What would your version of wise words to your younger self be? Like, if you were kind of starting your journey and a little bit unsure of where you wanted to go, what do you wish you could tell yourself then about life, about research, academia, anything?
When in doubt, reach out. When you do not really know what to do, or when something does not feel right, talk to people and try to make sure that whether that thing is okay to begin with, because there are several things that should not happen, with especially, academia has got some hierarchy, whether we like to talk about that or not, that is the case. So sometimes people abuse their power, especially towards people with at the base of the hierarchy. So you might think that something is normal, but or you might think that they are my supervisor, so they get to do that. But you know what? Sometimes that is not the case. So when something does not feel right, reach out, talk to the community. There are quite a lot of communities out there. We are here to support everybody. So if I were younger, if I was to start my PhD again and I was dealing with the same situation, I would just tell myself from the very first day, just reach out to the communities that can actually help you. And also just focus on your question and your research. And sometimes it might not go well. Some days, you might feel like hitting your head to the wall, but that means that you probably do something right. So, as a professor of mine in complexity used to tell me, it takes quite a lot of mistakes in order to do something right. So doing something wrong is not a problem. Doing something wrong might be actually the way towards the right. So it's all right.
Well, what better way to conclude than that? I think it's been a pleasure to hear about your stories and the wisdom that you shared along the way.
Thank you
And
very much.
and you'll definitely be an inspiration to people who don't feel included right now, but feel like they can be in AI. And that's really powerful. So thank you again for speaking with
Thank
us
you
today.
too. And please, if somebody feels like asking whatever or needs help, I would be more than happy to help out. It's
Yeah.
okay to feel that you need help. When you need help, just ask for it. Just, it's not that you should not be ashamed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the initiative here that we're creating with this interview series is to create this type of community, to get advice from each other, to support each other. And
Exactly.
it's wonderful. And thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. May you have a great day.
You too as
Thanks.
well. Bye. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.